pull the trigger, you're basically priming and firing the blaster at the same time. But this grip is not going to be for everyone because it's somewhat big. That's a pretty accurate look of what a blaster looks like. You can literally shotgun short darts. Hello everyone, Brachiosaurus227 here. Double action blasters are pretty hard to do. Of course there is a bunch of different types and there's a bunch made, but none of them are really practical. We have of course the nail biter, the void caster, the dart fire from Nerf, and those things are all pretty cool, but again, not practical at all. We have Busby with the trigger fire, and that thing could have been good, but they flopped it. It was absolutely terribly designed. They just failed in a lot of ways. And then you have the Snapfire 8, which was the first one from Nerf, and that thing was good, but it does have issues like bad performance, or outdated performance, I'd like to say. It breaks a lot, it's really prone to breaking, and it's practically unmoddable. So there's not really a lot of good double action blasters. But then it was revealed that Dart Zone would be doing one as well. Did they succeed? Well, let's find out. Because today we're going to be reviewing the Dart Zone Adventure Force Desperado. Does it live up to the hype? Yes, it does. Let's get started with the review. Included is the blaster itself and 12 darts. Alrighty guys, let's get into the overview, starting with the ergonomics. There is one grip on this blaster, it's the main grip, and it also actually integrates with the trigger. Normally the trigger I don't cover on ergonomics, but the trigger is literally part of the grip, and I'll explain that a little bit more. But overall, it's a pretty nice grip. Now, if you have smaller hands or medium hands, you might have trouble with this, and that is pretty much the only issue with it. But if you have somewhat large hands, you should be fine with it. I have a friend, Tess, aka Tessera's Nerf Room, and he can actually hold the grip pretty fine, and from what he says, he has pretty small hands. So it should be fine, but it is something to note that you can have, you could have some issues with the grip. Design-wise, it is pretty basic with the general Dart Zone designs, but it does have some cool little details, like this little thing here in the middle. It's like this little fan pattern. I really like that. I kind of like some of the designs here, but overall, it's pretty basic. The closest thing it has to a sling mount is this thing, but you could barely fit even a little string through there, so I don't think it really counts. But it actually is more of an iron sight than a sling mount, and it kind of lines up pretty nice. Now, you wouldn't think you would be able to use an iron sight for a blaster like this, but you actually can, and I'll get into that in a little bit. Operating the blaster is fairly easy. It is a 6-round cylinder blaster, so Strong Arm Maverick, that type of blaster. And you simply just load in here. Now, the cylinder doesn't pop out, but it gives you quite a bit of loading space, and I actually really like it. Once all 6 rounds are loaded into the blaster, you simply pull the trigger to fire because it is double action. If you don't know what that is, I will explain a little more detail near the end of the video, but basically, you pull the trigger, you're basically priming and firing the blaster at the same time. So one problem with double action blasters is sometimes they can be hard to stabilize, especially if you don't have a stock or any kind of foregrip. And it is evident with this blaster when you're firing faster. You can see the barrel will, move around just a little bit. Now that's not a big deal if you're just trying to, get a bunch of shots in a general direction, but if you're aiming, that can be a bigger deal. And we're going back to the iron sights here. There is a way you can use them, and that's just by pressing the trigger down halfway and pulling it the rest of the way. And as you can see, you get a lot more stable shots, and you can actually use this thing accurately. Also, something cool with the barrels, they're literally flared. So the top of the barrel is not as tight, but it gets tighter as it goes down, which is geniusly designed. Dart Zone has a terrible habit of having their barrels really loose where stuff will just fall out, darts will just fall out of them, the Villainator. And they figured out the perfect way to do that. So it has a tight fit near the bottom, which also helps with performance, and also it doesn't have an air restrictor or anything like that, which means that even though it's a pretty smooth trigger pull, you're still getting about 70 FPS, which is really good for something like this stock. Also, at the front of the barrel, there's actually this little flap, which I've already removed, and this thing is kind of a safety thing. They kind of have to do it legally to give it the 8+ rating, but basically, this little thing here actually limits the performance, but it also affects accuracy, because you have the thing pushing against the dart once the dart, chambers there. So basically, it's acting as a hop-up of sorts. That's not the right terminology to use, but basically it will affect the accuracy slightly. And once that's removed, the accuracy is great. And you'll see that the accuracy is affected a lot more with that in my firing demo, which I did fire it with that thing in there. But removing that thing gives you a 5 to 10 FPS boost, and it gives you a lot more accurate shots, which is really cool. And since this blaster has no dart posts, you can literally shotgun short darts, and quite effectively, I might add. So far, I've had absolutely no jams or malfunctions with this blaster. The only thing close to that is kind of a skill issue on my part. And that is, it's easy to skip rounds with this thing, but it's not a fault of the blaster, it's just something that you can find yourself doing accidentally. And that's because the trigger pull is rotating the cylinder. So watch, you fire, you can release the trigger pull, but you actually don't release it all the way, and you can pull back and advance the cylinder accidentally. It's easy to happen, and when you do that, you end up skipping around. But that's just something you gotta make sure you pull the trigger all the way and let it go all the way. And you don't have that issue at all. That's just something I noticed. But again, nothing wrong with the blaster, it's just something that you can accidentally do. So far, this blaster is really neat. Now let's take it out to the range. Alrighty guys, we have the Adventure Force Desperado with 6 of the included AF waffle darts. They are brand new, so let's get on with the testing. Alrighty guys, let's try doing a little bit faster. Nice. Alrighty guys, we're going to be firing with the X-Shot Insanity darts. I'm going to use the pink ones that were included with the blaster corn because they show up better on camera. So we'll do 3 shots rapid fire. Now we're going to do 3 shots with more single fire. There we go. Alrighty guys, just for the fun, we're going to be shotgunning short darts. I have 6 Ember darts and 6 Bamboo 2X. So let's see how well these do. We're going to do 3 rapid shots. Not too bad ranges and a pretty decent spread. Let's get some actual numbers though. I'm not going to get too much into the details of each individual short dart, but the average range for them is about 35 feet, which is pretty good for a short dart shotgun completely stock. The lowest Adventure Force dart at 36 feet. The lowest Insanity dart at 39 feet. A couple more Adventure Force darts at 41 feet, or 14 if it's backwards.
What?
The vast majority of darts at 47 feet. I believe the furthest Adventure Force dart at 50 feet. And the furthest 2 X-Shot Insanity darts at 53 feet. So what do I think of the Desperado? Well, let's get into a couple of complaints I have. The main complaint I have, and it's not even about me, it's me being more objective, is that this grip is not going to be for everyone because it's somewhat big. But if you have big hands, it's perfectly fine. Another little thing that is not really a big deal is the little flap that goes with the blaster that's in front there. Now, they legally have to put something like that there from what I've heard, but it does hinder the blaster. It affects the accuracy and it affects the performance quite a bit. But once you take that out, and it's really easy, anyone could do it, you need no modding knowledge, just a screwdriver and you're good. It is really easy to remove. Those are the only 2 complaints I have. Everything else I have about it is positive. This is literally the closest I think we'll get to a hammer shot killer. Now, I know a lot of people are going to get mad at me saying that, but I have my reasoning, and I'll make a whole video of it, but let me give you a brief little summary. These are the 2 most popular sidearm formats. The traditional priming action, like the strong arm, or hammer action, like the hammer shot. Now, the strong arm has the advantage in fire rate, which is really cool, but you need both hands to do it. Hammer action blasters like the hammer shot allows you to use it with one hand, but it affects your fire rate because since you're priming it with one hand, you don't have as fast of a fire rate. Now, it's pretty good, but it's not as fast as you might want it to be. This is the perfect combination of both worlds because it has the fast fire rate while being one-handed. I'll do a versus video on these sometime soon, but I'll say this. While I won't say it's necessarily a hammer shot killer, I don't think you really can have a hammer shot killer without it being hammer action. I think it does do something that hasn't been done in a while and offers competition. And the fact that this is even considered in the same conversation as the hammer shot and strong arm is amazing. So do I recommend this blaster? Yes, I do, if you think you can handle the trigger. Again, that is the biggest thing. A lot of people aren't going to like this trigger, this style, because their hands are smaller. If you have smaller hands, you're not going to be able to use it as effectively. But if you think you can handle this, or if you want to see if it actually works, then yeah, I'd say pick this thing up. It's definitely worth it. As for my personal opinion, this thing is amazing. I'm giving it a 10 out of 10 as my personal opinion. I would actually say that this is probably going to replace my Sweet Revenge as my main sidearm from now on. This thing is so good. It ticks all the boxes I've ever wanted out of a stock sidearm. Like, there's already a bunch of kits out. You can get this thing to shoot 110 FPS. There's just so many things you can do with it already. Like, already. Go check out Radioactive Design's store, like his shop. You can find some really cool stuff he has there for like 3D printed parts and stuff you can do to make this thing an absolute monster without really making it unusable. Heck, if you really wanted to stretch it out, it could even take a K26. Now, that's a really hard trigger pull, but it can do that. Thanks to Captain Xavier for figuring that out. So yeah, I give this a good recommendation if you're looking for a stock sidearm. This is definitely something to consider. And like I said, as my personal opinion, I absolutely love this thing. Anyway, guys, thank you all so much for watching this review of the Adventure Force Desperado. Before I go, I thought I would add a little skit, because why not? I'll see y'all in the next one. Hello everyone, school is in session. I am Karen. Let's show you how a double action blaster works. So normally a blaster, let's draw a quick, little description of a blaster. There we go, that's a pretty accurate look of what a blaster looks like. Normally a blaster primes and fires with this is a Springer by the way, it fires with a plunger tube with a spring down the middle, that's a spring. And there's of course the barrel, we'll put a dart there. And normally what you would do is have the trigger hooks up to a catch mechanism. And you'll have the priming handle, this is a priming handle by the way, and this priming handle will pull back onto there and click the spring in place. So once the spring is clicked in place, you hit the trigger and it releases the dart forward. But how the frick does a double action blaster work? Well, basically, let's draw a gun real quick, a Nerf gun, not a real one. With YouTube, I would like to talk about real guns though. Anyway, I'm Hasker. So the trigger is actually usually bigger or typically bigger, but basically the trigger, once you put it in, it activates this little thing. So then there's a little village of gnomes that live in your blaster. So these are gnomes. Very accurate description of gnomes. So those are two little gnomes. And once the trigger's in, it activates the magic light bulb. And once the magic light bulb's activated, the gnomes take the little spring and pull it back. So they pull back the spring and launch the dart out. And that's how a double action blaster works. That's not how it works. No, that's how it works. I know. I studied this in Harvard University. No. I am Karen. I studied everything. I know how a blaster works. It works because there's gnomes inside the blaster. That makes no sense. Fine. If you want to show how it works, then you say it then. Okay. Oh goodness, Karen and her stupid explanations. Here's how a double action blaster actually works. Let's take this rough draw as what the Desperado is. Normally you would have this, which is the plunger tube, and inside the plunger tube is a spring that, powers the blaster. Or normally you would have a priming rod that primes back, and the trigger releases the spring, which pushes air, which pushes the dart forward. But instead of a priming handle, with a double action, the trigger actually becomes the priming handle. So the trigger hooks up to here and pulls the spring back, and once it finally is in all the way, and let's erase that here, but once it's finally all the way in, it clicks, and there's a little click. That's how you spell click. And then there's a little click, and that releases the spring forward, which releases the dart forward. And that, my friends, is how a double action blaster actually works. Karen got it wrong. No, I did not get it wrong. Yes, you got it wrong, Karen. No, get away from me with that. You're done, buddy. Hey, stop it.
My junk drawer. So many things, I don't know what they're for, but I won't let it go, no, I will add more useless little things to my junk drawer.